Subway. Why is this a problem? Getting a sandwich. It's a sandwich. I got behind a lady. It looked like it was her first time out ever. Just a look of confusion, bewilderment. Came up to the counter. How does this work here? What do you do? It says step 1, pick bread. You don't see that? How do you make a sandwich at home? What, do you just start throwing ham all over the table? Pick the bread. And she saw the condiments, her head almost popped off her body. She was sitting there looking at the condiments, telling the guy, not that tomato, no, the third one underneath, that one on the side. I want that tomato. It's not a puppy. Making up there's rules at Subway you gotta follow. This woman's like, I don't want any of the cucumbers or olives, so double up on the turkey. It don't work that way. The sandwich is $5. There's a net profit of 4 cents on that. And you want double meat for no veg? And I feel for the guy working there. You gotta sit there and listen to this all day. He's like, I can't do it. I can't do that. They got cameras, they're looking at me. Come on, what do you want? I got no patience for this. Just keep it moving. When you're out, just keep. I don't hold it up. The guy asked me, what do you want on your sandwich? I told him, run it through the garden.
Sandwiches. Why are we talking about sandwiches today, Don?
Especially at Subway.
Thank you, Sebastian, for your wonderful wit and wisdom. And if you're listening to this, you got to go to the YouTube video because he's
hilarious.
What he says and how he says it with his body language and body antics are just as funny.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you may want to check it out. We found that on YouTube, and we've listened to his concerts or whatever you want to call them, and he's really good. I mean, he talks about his Italian history and his father, and he's hilarious.
So talking about sandwiches, on a light note, looking at the ingredients that you put in it, decision making, planning, dietary restrictions. There's so many components to sandwiches and how that plays into the sandwich generation. So once again, hello, this is Gina.
And this is Don.
This is podcast number 71 with Focused Healthy Family. Today, we're talking about handling the sandwich generation, all the components of the sandwich. First, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Our sponsor is Q Sciences. I've been a representative for Q Sciences for over a year. I found this company through a friend and did some research and reading about these products. And I really liked what I found when I learned about them. The research and time that they've put into the quality of these products to be better absorbed into the body. Things like the vitamin D spray. Our youngest was on a capsule vitamin D, and yet vitamin D levels remained the same with follow-up checkups. And with the spray, it increased.
Pretty strong.
Almost double.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking her levels were maybe 20. And I want to say they went up to 47 or something around that range. And the sleep spray is another great one. It's got melatonin, 5-HTP, and I believe another herbal supplement in there. And because it's a spray, you spray it on your tongue, it gets absorbed more quickly into your body to be more effective to help you in the moment. We're using the B12 spray. We've used the vitamin C spray. They have a Q Max product, which is a multivitamin.
And they also have the CBD, different, a variety of different.
It's full spectrum
full
hemp
spectrum, yes.
oils. They even have a THC free version. It comes in different flavors. There is a mushroom
Oh yeah.
armor. It's called Q Armor. It's a powder, and I get the chai flavor. Put it in my chai tea for a double chai drink.
So instead of, as they say, flushing your supplements down, well, the toilet or the drain, you want to get something like this that's fully absorbed. It's like flushing money down the toilet too, if you're not using a supplement that absorbs well and does well for your body. So that's what Q Science is really about. It's a good, well absorbed, high nutrient product.
They have multiple products. They have child specific products. They now also have some facial cream products. I've been using a night cream to minimize the effects of sunlight and stress and aging on my skin. And they have a hemp lotion. That's also a wonderful product that we've tried. So check us out, learn more. You can find the link at our website,
www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can also go to focusedhealthyfamily.com/Q Sciences, the letter Q and Sciences.
with an S at the end.
With the S at the end, yes.
And we're back. Don, what do you like on your sandwich?
Oh, I like, well, it goes, remember the days in school, I'd do a bologna, mustard, and Fritos sandwich. And you'd have to crunch it down. White bread too on top of it. So very soft, moist, kind of bread. That was my favorite. Bologna was my favorite as a kid. Now we don't do bologna now, but
What would you do at a Subway? I like the run it through the garden. Just a little bit of everything on there.
no, I don't think I wouldn't do that. Mine is lettuce, tomatoes, mayonnaise, pickles. I think pickles, depending on the meat. But I think it was Subway, the way you used to cut their bread. They didn't slice it in half. They sliced a groove into it and took the top out. I think it was Subway that did it that way.
There's so many different sandwich places now, and there's even some that have gluten-free bread, which is a real treat for those of us who do not eat gluten or cannot eat gluten. We went to a place up near where my sister lives. We're taking our daughter up there. And it's an Italian place. And oh my goodness, our youngest had a sub sandwich for the first time in her life. And just how delicious and yummy it was. I don't know if it's their own gluten-free bread, but it was quite tasty.
But today we're talking about a different kind of sandwich. It's the sandwich generation. It's the parents that are caught sandwiched in between raising their kids or taking care of even adult kids, financial support of some sort, and also being the caregivers for their own parents that may be coming to a point in their life where they need caregiving. So we're talking about the ingredients that it takes for that kind of sandwich.
And it's more about just being in the middle. Someone once said to me about, you feel sandwiched, you feel squished. It's more just being in the middle and balancing all these different things going on. And not unlike the person standing in line and having to make decisions about it. That's what we're talking about here. The decisions that need to be made, the conversations that need to be had, how to best get your needs met to help support your aging parents and your children who need support.
Well, and we're not talking about Subway's one step method. There are, I guess, steps to it, but it varies, and there's really no way of saying, well, you start here and then you go here and then you go here. With what we're talking about today, it's something that's going to vary depending on the people that are involved, both the aging parent and the parent. It's going to depend on what's going on for them. What is the diagnosis, I guess it might be the way of saying it.
Because typically if someone is aging in place and functioning very highly, very well, there's less concerns there. It's often something happens that triggers these conversations. Someone falls, breaks a hip, someone has a stroke.
Or you notice like we did with my mother, you notice the sticky notes all over the house that we're giving directions for herself, Yes.
Start to happen and get concerned for your loved one. Are they taking their medications right? Are they safe driving? Are they safe operating appliances in their house, cooking? And
well, you bring up a good point too. If they're functioning in the house well at this point and everything's going fine, that's actually the time to start to talk about this. If they're getting up in years, but they're still doing fine, they're very mobile, very able to function on their own, that's the time to begin a conversation, though.
When they're still of sound mind, especially if you've got just one living parent, what is it that they would like? If something happens, if whatever, what is important to them, what matters to them, what would, just like you talk about a living will and what they would like in the event of emergency and the need for resuscitation. So what is in the event of having a cognitive decline and needing physical help to do things?
Well, and finding out even realistic things like financials, where are things, so that if you are, especially if you are the it wouldn't be the executor at this point, it would be power of attorney. You really need to know where things are, where their money is, where their investments are, who they bank with, who do they and do their investments with, so that you're prepared for a point when they may not be able to communicate that to you.
And so to back up a little bit, just looking at some words today, as we talk about this idea of caring for aging parents, looking at advice versus information. I learned this years ago when I became a La Leche League leader supporting other moms with breastfeeding. And their slogan was, "We offer information, not advice." So depending on the person's competence, and especially if you're looking at like teens and young adult children, giving them the information and letting them make the decision. So providing the information, giving them the support, the resources, letting them know what options are available. Because when we start down the line of advice giving, well, I know what I think you should do. Don, you really should.
Yeah, you start shoulding on yourself or shoulding on them.
And that gets into a pointing the finger situation and the feeling like you're being told what to do. And when you're looking at independence and losing independence, if someone's getting older and having issues where driving is no longer safe for whatever reason, that's such a big part of independence. And so having the ability to make decisions and to take information and know what options there are is important.
When you kind of did that with your dad, and so that would be a good example of information. You and your mom had him with a psychological analysis for driving.
It wasn't psychological. It was an occupational therapy driving assessment. But before we talked about, okay, what's plan B here? If you don't pass this, say you're not safe to drive, you can have a driver. What are your other options for driving? If it's a physical issue with driving, there are so many different services now between Uber and Lyft, and goes way beyond the old days of a taxi. There's special transport systems in different cities across the United States, different ways of getting.
Yeah, there's a lot of senior programs out there for transportation that will provide drivers to take you to doctor's appointments and things like that. So it varies on every city.
So
'Cause
having that information,
Yeah,
because if you don't have a car, then you don't have a car payment, you don't have insurance, you don't have those expenses and
oh,
fees.
that might be nice now.
And they can be put to use in a different way.
Well, now there's even I know here there's this program where you can basically rent a car as needed.
Yes.
I thought that was a really interesting concept, and for a situation like this, it might be something that would work. Anyway, that's just one thought, but it kind of goes to, talking about information. It goes to the same idea that we talk about with kids, about empowering them to come up with the answer, empowering them to be part of the conversation. I think that falls in place here even with seniors. Now, when you have a parent that's cognitively not able to do that, I can understand then, but the spouse, the partner, being able to allow them to feel like they have input, that they make the decisions.
Giving options when someone has cognitive impairment.
Yeah.
Options of where they're going, what they're eating. It's always important to have choices, and any opportunity when you're dealing with young children is finding those areas where, safety's not involved, picking out their clothes, letting them make those decisions for themselves, giving them information. Well, this is the weather, and when it's summertime, we generally prefer this kind of clothing, and giving them that information, and then stepping back and saying,
If they
it's 80 degrees out, it's summer, and they want to wear pants and a jacket. Well, what is the harm there?
Yeah, they
Let
can
them
take the jacket off, whatever, yeah.
make those decisions, and having backup options, bring the extra pair of
Choices,
clothes
yeah.
in the car just in case they do want to change.
It's like being with the child again in a way, it sometimes.
Picking your battles, what is it that really matters? What can we let go of?
Well, and then if you do have some thoughts or advice that you want to give out, ask first. I've got some thoughts, would you be okay with me sharing them with you?
We've done that with our adult daughter. Are you interested in hearing advice, or you just want to vent and want us to listen? And sometimes she just wants to listen and hear. And sometimes the answer is yes, please give me your advice. What do you think I could do? What ideas do you have for me? And
then allowing them to make the decision of whether they want to follow the advice or not. That's always a tough one too, because when you're giving advice, a lot of times you think this is the right way to do it. And if they're not doing it that way, then they're wrong, and that you have to get past that mindset, which is tough.
And like in my situation, I've got a fully competent parent and one who has significant cognitive impairment, and providing support for my mom, who is the caregiver, and giving her the information. And it's really quick to jump down the advice,
which turns into control.
Which I know, we have done that. And yet it's important, just like with kids, to step back and say, okay, what do you need?
Yeah.
What's important to you right now? What would be helpful to you?
How can I support
I love
you?
that question. I can't remember where I got it from, but how can I support you right now? How can I help you? That's a great thing to say to a child, to a teen, to a young adult, to a parent, to anyone, your spouse. How can I support you right now? Because sometimes what we think they need help with is not what they're thinking. A fun little story. My sister had surgery. This has been 20 years ago. And I went there to help her out, and I thought I was going to be helping her clean her house, cooking, doing laundry, other things. And instead I bathed a dog. I helped to sort ribbons. We did go grocery shopping together, and I did do some cooking. But what was important to her at the time looked differently than what I thought it would be. And yet that was what was helpful to her. And probably the first time I bathed the dog.
of her many dogs.
Uh, so it's important to stop and take ourselves out of it, take our judgment, our opinions.
Our expectations.
Yeah, that's a big word.
Yeah.
It's a really big word when we have expectations of what is going to happen, what things are going to look like. It's easy to go down the path of, well, if you continue to do this, then this is going to happen. You are going to fall. You're going to get hurt. You're going, and older people hear that a lot. When I bring up this question about falls with the people that I work with in the nursing home and rehab, a lot of times they hate that word. They don't want to hear that. They don't want to think about that. And yet my job is to anticipate the problem areas and to do what we can to minimize that. Yet it can feel like a prediction.
Yeah. Well,
so balance,
self-fulfilling, maybe,
yet balancing the expectation of what could happen, what we need to plan for versus just expecting the worst.
Well, it's also understanding their expectations kind of versus your expectations, or the family. There's a lot there. If you think about it, your mom's expectations, and even your dad's expectations, as much as discombobulated as they can be, still doesn't hurt to know. But knowing your mom's, knowing yours, knowing your brothers and sisters,
what we're able to do,
and it might even stretch out into relatives, because you'll have to, as a caregiver, you're going to have to probably answer. I don't know if I like the word answer too, but you're going to have to be able to speak to them, because they may be interested in knowing what's going on and where they can support and help too.
People offer, how can I help? Let me know if I can help you. And knowing
what they're expecting and how that matches.
Yeah. Do you assume they're just saying that because that's what people say? Who really means it? What's really helpful to you? So
it comes down to then how you make your decisions is going to play on all of those different things we just talked about, in a way. How your expectations fall into it, how your parents' expectations fall into it. Who's going to make the decisions on things? Should it be the spouse or the partner of the person that's going through the issues? Is the person that the parent that's having the cognitive, are they allowed to make decisions? Should they make decisions? So all of that, I think, is part of what needs to be talked through and talked around,
And on that line of decisions, you have to look at legally who's able to make decisions. Do you need to invoke a power of attorney in a situation?
That sounds, invoke the power of attorney. That sounds like something out of Harry Potter in a way. Like a spell. Sorry, it just that kind of comes across.
The other thing that goes through my mind is our decision-making skills and style and understanding. I think you took our daughter shopping for shoes and she tried some on and they fit. And you're like, okay,
that's it.
Let's go. And she's like, but we didn't try anything else on. And you didn't talk to the salesperson and ask questions. And she was used to my way of doing things.
Yeah.
And
I've done shoe shopping enough with you to know that it just not even go there. There's nothing I can ask or do. And that's, you
made assumptions.
Yes, I made assumptions.
Based on going with me as an adult versus taking a 14-year-old to the store. So looking and understanding that, and understanding, is your parent, the person you're helping, are they the type that is going to stand in front of the counter full of meats and vegetables and linger for a long time before they decide what it is they want? Are they the type that, let me give, places that offer a taste test, would you like to try this to see if you like this?
Oh my. Like the artisans.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Gelato place. Oh my gosh.
Free gelato place.
You could stand there all day just tasting the They probably
sample.
have what about 15 or 20,
Flavors.
different flavors, and you can try all of them. It's tough to make a decision in that place.
Yeah, we have food issues and sensitivities in our family that have restricted our kids' choices. And the first time we took our daughter there, 15 to 20 options, gluten-free cones, everything is dairy-free, dye-free, and she got to choose from all of it. And to her, it was exciting.
Yeah.
Usually it was like, okay, you have one or two choices. And having all those choices, it can be overwhelming to
Yeah.
have too many choices.
Well, and maybe we should talk about this idea of Google searching. You have to make a decision, or you have to give support and figuring out what you need and all that. And so you can dive down the Dr. Google searching method.
So before you jump into that, the pros and cons
Yeah,
of having
yeah.
access, really unlimited access to information.
Mhm.
And so there are pros and cons.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, that you go down the rabbit hole and you start digging into things, and it can be an overload of information.
3 days later, not eating a thing, make
Or
the
you
coffee.
get distracted by, oh, wait, look at this over here. I'm going to check
This
this
shiny
out.
object on the side.
What you're researching had nothing to do with what your original plan
Well,
was.
because Google loves to see what you're doing and then starts throwing things out around that to distract you. But it is an area that you can find the help you need. And we talk about one of the talks that I do, and we talk about, is when you're long distance, when somebody, a family member can't be there to help, they can do things like doing searches for facilities, searching for
Doctors.
insurance information or different things like that. And that's one of the big pros, I think, of Google, is that, yeah, it gives that person that's a distance able to help out and support.
When we were looking at my dad and concerned about his different medications and all the components of things that he has going on, I'm like, what he needs is a geriatric neuropsychiatrist. And so I literally Googled that and found the one specialist in the Charlotte area who actually does just that. And from that was able to give that information. And I had given it to my mom before my dad went in the hospital this last time. And yet it took until he went in the hospital for her to move forward with that and providing the information. And having access to that is wonderful. Yet, as we all know, when it comes to medical issues and diagnoses, we can go down that rabbit hole of trying to diagnose ourselves, trying to understand what's going on, and getting all sorts of information via random sources. And self-diagnosis can be quite harmful.
Well, and that's where I think it's important too, to have somebody outside the internet, somebody maybe local, that you can gain advice, that you can iron these things out with, that you can say, this is what I found on the internet. Is this true? Is this really something I should be concerned about? Whether it might be their doctor, it might be, I believe very much in naturopathic doctors, in being able to know a lot of information and help weed things out. I know my naturopathic doctor that I work with, and then who's also helped me a lot, he was able, he helped me out in the fact of understanding what my doctors were trying to do. They work in a very different pattern. Naturopathic doctor is working with natural healing methods,
Looking at how the body is designed to heal and repair
the whole person,
itself,
yeah.
and how you can support that and as a whole person.
So
But he had the understanding of the medical doctor's perspective.
yeah, they do. They basically learn the same information, same studies, I guess you'd say. And like I said, as an example, my cardiologist, I went to him and said, this is what medicine this cardiologist is wanting me to do. This is what he's trying to do. This is how he's doing it. And my naturopath was very good about saying, well, here's what I see him trying to do with this and what this medicine is trying to do. And then he gave me options. He didn't say, you need to do this with this supplement instead. He said, now you can stay with that. Here's the good parts of it. Here's the side effects of it. But here's a supplement that can do a lot of the same things. So it's your choice. So anyway, it's finding people outside of the internet that are maybe local that you can, turn to and say, this is what some of the things I found. Is this going to a facility that you're
Before you dive in,
yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm going.
thing after another, you bring up a good point. It's important to gain different perspectives. My dad has a neurologist that specializes in Parkinson's and other movement disorders, and yet there's nothing wrong with a second opinion. There's nothing wrong at looking up some information, looking at some other sources, someone who's written a book, going to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, looking at other options, listening to people speak, talking to other professionals who are not doctors per se, but there are other in the medical field, nurses, therapists, other people.
Nurse practitioners, a lot of times, my sister was one, and they have a lot of the same knowledge that a doctor does, so they can be good with the being able to go through some of this stuff too.
These practices have those people in place, but looking elsewhere as well. And so it's important. And when it comes to your medical health, if we're tuned in, if we're paying attention, we really know our own body better than other people. Are we paying attention? Are we tuning in? Are we aware of the things that are affecting us? Everybody responds differently to things. With every medication, there are potential side effects. And yet you could be one of those people who has a different side effect than is listed on what are possible. We all respond differently to different things. And so we need to know ourselves. We need to understand ourselves, and we need to understand what we're willing to do and accept. And that's a huge thing with looking at helping our parents. What are they willing to do and accept? What borders, what boundaries do they place on their decision making? Because trying to convince someone to do things in a whole new way when they've lived 70 plus years of life, if they're not open to that, you're just going to be beating your head against a wall and not exhausting yourself. And it can be a matter of how we present it and accepting differences of opinion and accepting that it's not going to look the way you would ideally want it to look.
Well, you want to think about presenting it in a positive versus a negative. You instead of saying you can't do this and you can't do that, give them the options of what they can do. Use choices, multiple choices kind of things. It really works. These are some things I found that you could try. You could try this or this or this. And I'm just putting it out there in front of you you make the choice of what might work for you.
When it comes to young kids, I believe in minimizing our no's, saving no's for running out into a street, for things that are really dangerous, a hot stove, so that it has some meaning behind it. And with kids, it can be really powerful, that ability to say, look, let's try this over here, to distract them, to offer another option, to let them know what they can do. When we walk in the street, we hold hands and we look both ways.
We don't go out in our socks and underwear if you're a senior.
But looking at seriously what people can do, and if you're constantly being told you can't do this, you can't do that, no, that's not safe, no, that's not a good idea, you feel like all these people are just stopping you from doing things, and it really is a taking away of your freedom. And imagine being 75, 80, you've lived all these years, you've developed all this wisdom and knowledge, and even if you now have cognitive impairments, to be told you can't do things, and for these people to be giving you this advice. Or
taking away keys, or taking away some of the things that they love to do. Think about how that,
It's
emotionally affects them, let alone cognitively.
It's disheartening. It's disabling. It's the opposite of empowering and helping us people to move forward. Excuse me.
So it's also about asking versus just telling. Like you say, if you have, I think we've talked a little bit about this, if you have advice, asking them if they really want to hear that advice, if they're open for it, or if they're available to be able to really take it in.
And it could be the timing of it. I have some ideas and information. When you're ready,
Yeah.
let me know. Or is now a good time?
Instead of doing you should be doing this, or you need to do this. Here's what you got to do.
Would you like me to listen, or we'd like to look at some options? And knowing, how about I present you with 2 or 3 options and we can look at that. It can be overwhelming, just like with a young child, and you give them way too many options. And then they don't know where to begin. They don't know where to start. Narrowing down, just like if you do a search on the internet, you're going to narrow it down. If you're going to go out to eat, you're going to narrow down. Okay, I'm gluten intolerant. I'm going to avoid these places. I'm going to narrow down my search. I'm looking up to find a house online, and I know I can spend this much money and I need this many bedrooms, and you put those criteria in there. If you're looking for a facility options for a loved one to live at, do they have independent living and assisted living? Do they have memory care? What resources do they have? Do they provide transportation?
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of questions, and that's something, that just as a little plug here, but that's some area that, both Gina and I, Gina especially, can help you to know what questions to ask, because there's a lot of questions that you really need to ask about a facility, or what direction to go with certain things. So understand that. Don't be afraid to ask those questions either.
And so if you're supporting someone and helping them with this process, breaking it down into small steps to not overwhelm, narrowing things down. Because if you just share a whole lot of information, if we came to you and just told you everything that we knew on this topic in the 3-hour, 5-hour podcast, you wouldn't get through that whole thing. You'd tune out at some point. The inundation with information would be overwhelming.
I always liked Esther Hicks she talks about, would you want all the food you're ever going to eat right now? No, it'd be so overwhelming, so much that you need to take small bites at a time. And that's what you're talking about with that is, let's start here and let's talk about this as a beginning. Just being able to have the conversation with your parents is very important. And so it's starting there. Hey, let's just making sure that they're open for conversation is
build the foundation.
Yep.
Let's start here. We're gonna have wheat bread. We're gonna have gluten-free bread. How are we going to proceed with this?
1 step, 2 steps. They're right here.
Okay, so we're gonna
back to Sebastian. Sorry.
We're going to have a conversation. So there is a starting place. You talk about, there's not a step 1, 2, 3, 4, but there can be.
Yeah, you can make your steps.
You can set them up. Okay, now, we realize we need this amount of support. We need to have a caregiver providing assistance with daily tasks. We need someone in charge of medication. These are the things we need. Okay. We know maybe the person gets overwhelmed by too much stimulation. Okay, we don't want all the toppings. Or maybe they like a lot of choices and options. We want, running through the garden. There's all these different components and factors, and there can be multiple people involved in this, supporting my mom, who's supporting my dad, and in the context of the family and the input we're getting from the other siblings, and looking at the big picture of this, looking at the long term, all the different what ifs. There's a lot of components and factors there.
Yeah.
Your resources, what are your time resources, your financial resources, your emotional resources, knowing your own limitations so that, caregiver burnout can happen on all different levels. It can happen for the direct caregiver or the supplemental caregivers, like as we are supporting my parents, my mom, and realizing, if you spread yourself too thin, you're going to get cracks in your foundation.
And that's where the asking then comes in, asking for support, asking people for the help you need or the things you need.
And knowing, like for us, knowing what support we need, what resources we need, what's too much, what do we need to let go of? You talked about control before, and realizing some things are really just out of our control and that we have to let go of having things look a certain way, and knowing, okay, it might not look anything like I imagined, but maybe there's some other possibilities that I can't even see right now or that I don't feel open to right now. But as circumstances change, having those other factors. We wrote down a list of.
So I was going to say, just kind of quickly summarize what we talked about before we read.
Talk about, Don?
No, I think we got them all because we talked about advice versus information. We talked about support versus control, expectations, and how to understand everybody's expectations so that you can kind of get a feel of how to approach things, and doing this without judgment. Without judging somebody's ideas, without judging where they're at.
And yet not expecting other people to not have judgment. And realizing it's human nature that we are going to make judgments on things, but recognizing that that's what that is.
And that there are a lot of decisions that have to be made within this realm that we're talking about, and taking one step at a time in those decisions. You don't have to decide them all now. You want to learn about and get all the information you can behind each decision so that you can make a good decision,
as well as knowing what kind of decision making style that you're dealing with, your partner is, your parent is, the caregiver, your children, all the different components. We're all different personalities, and understanding how that can play a factor,
and making sure that the people, like the parents, are very involved in those decision making, that you're not trying to take over all the decision making yourself. You're finding out how much their expectations are in their decision making, so that you can make good decisions together.
Talking about empowering people and giving people options and that power of decision making. So 9 years ago, we moved. We helped my parents move from one house to another, and our youngest child was 5 at the time, and she needed something to do. She needed to be kept busy. So we gave her a clipboard with a pen, and we told her she was the supervisor. And she kind of remembers it fondly, that she really didn't have a real job per se, yet it gave her a sense of importance. It gave her something to do. And she went around and asked people questions and scribbled on the paper or whatever. But it was giving her a role, not just saying, go away, you can't help us with this.
Yeah. Making her feel part of it.
My dad, with his significant dementia, giving him choices and opportunities to engage in things.
Keep his mind active too, But we also talked about going down the Google rabbit hole and being careful with that, but using it for the power that it does have. And it does have a lot of power to it.
Looking at the pros and cons of being able to access information and research. How is this helpful? How is this not helpful?
And how does it help others that aren't in the area?
Yeah.
To be able to help out too, be supportive. And then we talked about positive talk versus negative talks, trying to get past the can'ts and don'ts and shouldn't kind of place and get to a place of, here are the things you can do. And then asking versus telling. And this is a big component here, really, if we think about it, is about asking, because it's tough to do when you're in, we've always talked about the idea of mental versus physical issues. When it's physical, people beat down your door with casseroles and doing things for you.
If someone has a physical
Yes,
illness,
but-
recovering from a heart attack versus going through emotionally challenging things. But
So it becomes important for the caregivers to be able to ask for what they need and support and feel confident in that asking.
and it's also important, if you're supporting someone, is to ask them what they need.
Yes.
Looking at it from that angle as well, and rather than just throwing out information at you. So gave you lots of things to munch on. I'd
And-
love to hear your take on sandwiches and decisions and all things parenting. And
That's our podcast for today. We hope that you enjoyed it. We would love to hear your comments, like Gina said. Make sure to leave us a comment if you can, wherever we are hearing this or watching this.
leave a review.
Review, yes. If you like what you heard today, you can learn more about our parent coaching program or join us for our next workshop. We're here to help consult with you, to help you through this, because we've been through it. Gina's has the experience of working in the facilities where, you know,
Working
that
with the
senior
geriatric
population.
for a long time.
So you can find out about our blog. You can get our Tuesday tips for parents, which are some very constructive, effective tips for parents. Every week we do it via Tuesday on a blog. On a podcast, and we also have it by email. You can find out all this information by going to our website at focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's focus with an ED, healthyfamily.com. You can follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family. You can follow us on Instagram at gina.focusedhealthyfamily. And remember, how you speak to your children today shapes their future and yours.